Good morning, buenos dias, what's up, sin chao, ni hao. How are you doing? It's me, Mr. Jordan. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 24 of The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. We'll start with a brief recap and summary of the chapter. Then we're going to get into a close reading, do some line-by-line analysis, and we'll finish up with vocabulary, including the context and definitions of the word. Time for the brief recap of chapter 24 of The Handmaid's Tale. Offred, our narrator, returns from the commander's office where they've just been playing Scrabble and breaking the law by consorting privately. She goes to her room and she recalls this event when she was younger, watching a television interview with the old mistress of a Nazi executioner who operated the ovens at the camps. So he was literally killing people, murdering thousands and thousands of Jews. It doesn't say whether it was at Auschwitz or Treblinka. Offred is trying to make sense of what's just happened when she played Scrabble with the commander. And this recollection of the interview with the mistress, what we're told is that the mistress says, I just remember the nice things, hanging out with him, swimming, I enjoyed him, he was an okay guy. A few days later, after this television interview airs, the woman commits suicide. And parallel is between Offred possibly becoming mistress, the consenting mistress of the commander, and this other consenting mistress of a Nazi. Fred goes back to her room and kind of collapses, and she has this moment that's almost like a rebirth, feeling like she's going to vomit. She's hyperventilating as if she's going into birth, and then she falls onto the floor in her closet and literally curls up in the fetal position, as if she's gone to the dark underworld with the commander, and now she's returning and being reborn as something new. Let's dig into some of the dialogue and line-by-line read. Quote, I know I need to take it seriously, this desire of his. It could be important. It could be a passport. So she's acknowledging this idea of a passport. In other words, how she can utilize or take advantage of the commander's new affection or at least interest in her presence and her existence in the household. How can she use him as a ticket or a passport, get herself out of there and escape the current prison that she's in? There's this segue into the story about the old Nazi executioner and his suicidal mistress. He wanted me to play Scrabble with him and kiss him as if I meant it. This is one of the most bizarre things that's happened to me. Context is all. And so what is the context? Well, the context is that he's the hand or the arm of Gilead in this suppressive, repressive regime. Theocratic principles of Old Testament religion, essentially to ruin her life. Our narrator's old life is ruined and finished, and the commander is the hand or the fist. The one I remember best was with a woman who had been the mistress of a man who had supervised one of the camps where they put the Jews before they killed them. In the ovens, my mother said. There's some ghastly and unsettling but appropriate imagery. There's something especially terrifying to a child in that idea. Ovens mean cooking, and cooking comes before eating. I thought these people had been eaten, which in a way, I suppose they had been. Then we're told of the mistress that she had a fairly good life and was more or less enjoying herself during the Holocaust. The woman said she didn't notice much that she found unusual. She denied knowing about the ovens. The sod, the lie, cannot be maintained. At the time of the interview, 40 or 50 years later, she was dying of emphysema. She coughed a lot and she was very thin, but she still took pride in her appearance. She was carefully made up, heavy mascara on her eyelashes, rouge on the bones of her cheeks, over which the skin was stretched like a rubber glove pulled tight. She was wearing pearls. In other words, she's really done herself up, right? Superficially, this woman's prepared for this interview as if it's something to be proud of, or she wanted to look good for this moment on television where she discusses her ex-lover committing mass murder. He was not a monster, she said. People say he was a monster, but he was not. Several days after this interview, she killed herself. It said that, right on television. Nobody asked her whether or not she had loved him. What I remember now, most of all, is the makeup. There's this real emphasis on the visual appearance of the woman, how she presented herself or wanted to present herself as a mistress, right? Or as the old lover of this man who, by all accounts, was a monster and a murderer. Offred's relating this memory to her current position, or the position she's being asked to step into, a new role as the commander's actual mistress and concubine, right? Kissing him as if she means it. That means she would be complicit with his actions and what he's doing. And what she believes he's doing is tantamount to mass murder and gender and religious-based oppression, dogmatic oppression. She tells us, I stand up in the dark, start to unbutton, right? She's coming undone. She's telling us she's unbuttoning, not just her clothes, herself. Then I hear something inside my body. I've broken. Something has cracked. That must be it. Noise is coming up, coming out of the broken place. In my face, I cram both hands over my mouth as if I'm about to be sick. Drop to my knees, the laughter boiling like lava in my throat. Again, this image of lava, of this violent, hot, powerful force beneath the earth that's going to force itself up and explode in volcanic rage. I crawl into my cupboard, draw at my knees. I'll choke on it. My ribs hurt with holding back. I shake, I heave, seismic, volcanic. I'll burst. Red all over the cupboard. Mirth rhymes with birth. Oh, to die of laughter. Chapter ends on a dark but somber note. Silence after the creative destruction that's happened within her soul and herself. I lie on the floor, breathing too fast, then slower, evening out my breath, as in exercises for giving birth. All I can hear now is the sound of my own heart, opening and closing, opening and closing. All right, let's jump into some quick vocabulary. Perspective. So perspective comes from the idea of to look at, to perspect, to look at closely. And it's the idea of representation, how something appears when viewed or regarded relative to a position. If you shift even 1 degree off center, the whole world is given a new perspective. If your context or where you're coming from is slightly altered, it can drastically affect how you see the thing, right? If I look at my microphone like this, it's a circle. If I shift it slightly, it becomes this oblong object. So even just a few degrees and your whole perspective changes. Clearly, this is a reference to the event that's taken place with the commander. Entering that private office, seeing those books, playing Scrabble, even though she's in the household and no big affair or actions happen, drastically altered the perspective of Offred. The word ectoplasm is used in this chapter, and in scientific terms for biology, it means the viscous, clear outer layer of a cell, like the ectoplasm you have in your blood. But the word actually had a much different meaning before, and I think it's a reference to the rebirth and the process of the old self dying and coming up anew that's happening to our hero in the story. A supernatural viscous substance that supposedly exudes from the body of a medium during a spiritualistic trance and forms the material for the manifestation of spirits. I think that's what's happening. Last chapter we saw the idea of Moira being apotheosized, or rising up to become almost godlike in the eyes of the other handmaid. In this chapter we see Offred going through this spiritual reincarnation where her soul or spirit is rising up. And I think the word ectoplasm is Atwood hinting at this process. Mystification comes from mystify, originally from mystic or mystère, meaning a mystery, something that's unknown or unknowable. It often means to be utterly bewildered or confused, to not understand the meaning of a thing. But it can also mean to obscure or to make something mysterious. So similar, again, to this idea of something being nuanced or clouded or hard to understand and conceive of. The mystification of the thing is making it less clear, more opaque, more blurry. Hysteria is the exaggerated or uncontrollable excitement and emotion. It's also an old-fashioned term for what was once considered a real psychological disorder. Psychosomatic or stress would materialize into a certain set of symptoms, and it was almost always male doctors who were sort of creating this set of ideas that were evinced by women and calling these women hysterics, or saying that the women had hysteria, and usually sending them off an asylum or a mental institute. But it was basically like a fugue state or a trance, like this dreamlike la la land where women went and they were in a hysteria. I don't want to presuppose that it was maybe just depression or anger, something that we think of along those terms now, but for many years, hundreds of years, hysteria was a real diagnosis, and male doctors use it to more or less diagnose women as being crazy. Thanks so much for watching. That was chapter 24 of The Handmaid's Tale. I hope you like it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Take care. I'll be back with chapter 25 of The Handmaid's Tale.